welcome to XReality podcast. I'm the host, Dominic Wu, and beside me is our guest, Ryan. Hi, Ryan. Could you share a little bit about your background with us?
Yeah, definitely. I'm super happy to be on here. So I'm Ryan Canuel. I run Petrichor and co-founder and CEO there. We started Petrichor back in 2015, actually. So it's going to be 10 years in May, and we're focused on game development. We started actually originally more focused on mobile games, and we always were interested in the XR space. We did game jams with DK2. We did uh, client work with the Google Cardboard and got to play a little bit with like Google Project Tango when that was still early. So we were always really interested in the XR space, but a lot of our own original games, we stuck to more traditional game markets early on. And it was about 5 or 6 years ago was when we decided that we had this weird split in the studio where we do a mix of work with clients and original IP. So we've never raised any outside funding through VCs or angels. We've bootstrapped through work for hire. And a lot of our work for hire was getting very specialized in XR, primarily augmented reality. And we were building up this really interesting expertise in that space, but a lot of our original work was still traditional flat screen games, which are super competitive and difficult to stand out in. And so finally, we were just looking at what we wanted to do going forward. We just finished shipping a game that we'd spent a really, really long amount of time working on. That, every game dev pretty much has this story, but
How can I how long is that long? Like how long is this game?
yeah, so we had this game Operation Dogfight, and gosh, we probably I'd say all in all took us between 3 to 4 years to ship that game.
Wow, wow. I remember I was a solo developer and I worked probably around 9 months and shipped a game that I was not
Mhm.
really happy about it. And I think it took me so long, but when you said that 3 to 4 years,
Yeah.
wow.
And what drew it out so long was that since we do client work, there were gaps where all of a sudden the team would get pulled from that game,
Hmm.
and then the next 6 months they'd be on a work for hire project for a client, and then they'd go back onto the dogfight game that we were building, but they didn't remember any of what they were doing before. So there was this constant like switching, and it just was a terrible way to build the game. So coming out of that, we were like, okay, we have to do this differently. And that's when we're looking at like what are we interested in? Where do we feel like we could build something that could stand out more? We're a really technical team. We have a lot of like engineers on the team, and we're just like more like game studios I find are usually like driven by a particular department. Like the games are very art driven or audio driven. We're very technical driven.
Hmm.
And so XR was great because like it's such a technical space still. And so besides that, it was just like it was still like we were seeing pass-throughs start to at the time it was still really new. Like Quest 2, it was just this like early thing people were playing with.
Hmm.
Quest Pro wasn't even out yet. And that was around the time that we started to get interested. And we were doing a lot of mobile AR, and we were like, oh, this is going to start to come onto a lot of the headsets. What if we built a really robust game for these headsets? Because we had done a game for Snapchat on that was a Snap Lens
Hmm.
that we spent about a year building with them. That was like this detective game. You would like populate the room, and since it was all running in a lens, it had to be really simplistic.
Hmm.
But one of the things from that game was so many people wanted to like reach out and touch the stuff in the room, but since we couldn't do hand tracking on the phone, you couldn't get that same experience. And we were like, oh, this would be so much cooler if it could be on a headset. So that was kind of what like got us interested and excited about building on like Quest and these headsets with pass through.
Hmm. Yeah. So as for your kind of like a journey, what's your journey of being where you are today? So, for example, you mentioned earlier you were graduate from like a game design, kind of like a degree. And can you share a little bit about like what draws you to get into like getting this degree, and also what types of influence or what types of philosophy that you have to
Mm.
develop a game.
Sure. Yeah, so what drew me to game design school was when I was in high school, I was playing games that were more story-driven fantasy games. So I was really into like Mass Effect and Dragon Age and really any of the BioWare games and like I was starting to see games as more of an art form, but also just what they could be in terms of storytelling and um, just something that's really, really engaging compared to film or TV, which I also really enjoy. But I knew I wanted to go into some kind of an entertainment field. I was really into theater, and I looked at games and thought, like, this is the best of it. Like, you get to like live in these worlds and change the outcomes. And I was so excited about the idea of working on games. So that was what originally drew me to a game design program was that I knew how to do some basic programming and I reasonably enjoyed doing it, but really I was excited about the design side. So that was what drew me. I went to this college, Becker College in Worcester, and we're in Massachusetts. That's where we're based now. And so I went to school for game design there. And over the length of being in game design school for 4 years, I learned that what I thought a designer wasn't really what in reality that job position was, right? Um, and I also found that programming was just something I didn't have the attention to sit and focus and program for hours every day. So I tried a whole bunch of things and really like I got excited about the idea of production, but really even that I started to get really interested. I took a business class
Mm.
and that was like when I was most excited and really, really enjoyed that course. And I met a mentor through like an internship program that they ran at the school that I went to. And he was the one who pushed me to say, hey, you should try and start your own company, which was like an insane thought to me at the time because I was meeting with him and I told him like at some point I want to start a company like 15, 20 years once I've worked professionally long enough to know what I'm doing. And he was like, well, why don't you just try doing it now? You have nothing to lose. Like, it's if you fail, it really won't impact you that significantly. You can always still go find a job after. And that was when I was like, yeah, that's actually kind of a crazy idea, but like I'd like to try it. And so I had texted a bunch of friends of mine, people that I had worked with while I was in school that I really I wanted to keep working with them. They were great to work with, and I thought they were all super talented, and that ended up being like the core founding team, and a lot of that team still we're still together at Petrichor.
Wow, so it started from like your college and your college buddies, like
Yeah.
you guys work together. It reminds me of another company, Nano. It was my previous client. They were college friends. One was major in biology, the other one is more computer science, and they combined together. And right now they create a very successful like a prototype. Molecule inside VR
Mm,
space. So yeah, so it's it starts with like a university college as well. So yeah, I
yeah.
really like admire this type. So like starting everybody when they were students and now they grow things together after like a 10, 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So why the name is called Petrichor? What's the story?
So petrichor is the word to describe the smell after a rainstorm. Um,
That's why I was like, wow, it looks like a pad. Like I don't know. Like
yes.
I was thinking about because this word is like a GRE word. It's not really normal. You can see every day.
Yeah, and we don't spell it correctly, and that's kind of the so when we were trying to figure out what we wanted to name the studio,
Mm,
we were looking up like someone on the team had pulled up a list of like the 50 most beautiful words,
mm.
and so we were running through them like which words we liked, and one of them was petrichor, and he was like, "Oh, it's the smell after rain," and we were like, "Oh, that's like such a universally pleasant thing. Like everybody really likes that."
Mm.
And I wrote it on the whiteboard, but I'm terrible at spelling, and so the correct spelling of petrichor is Petrichor.
Oh,
So it's like a combination of Petrus and Ichor, and it's like a Latin word or Greek word for I
oh,
think the blood of the earth is
wow.
what it translates to. So it's really cool word. We spelled it Petricore.
Yeah.
But when we all like looked at it, we were like, actually, we kind of like that. It looks more like a tech company. So that's we just rolled with my misspelling, and that's how we ended up getting the name.
Wow, yeah, it reminds me of like my first like a kind of like a design studio name. It's called
Mm,
Hummingbird Day.
mm,
It's like a I remember my thought is that every dog has its day and hummingbird well has hummingbird's day. And I always refer myself as a hummingbird because I mean
mm,
my background I came from Taiwan on my own, got scholarship and got all the like I got my citizenship back in 2022. So it took me like 13 years. So I
mm.
think of
Yeah,
myself as like a super small, like a little bird and high energy. Just keep working. So that's the same types of like thoughts and naming. It's just like a something that makes you feel like really good, really inspiring, even though
yeah,
I remember I showed to my friend or teacher. They say, "Oh, this looks not like a design studio," but anyway,
yeah,
cool. So Patrico, now I know why it comes to like the entire background story.
yeah.
Before I thought like something related to pet and some core value regarding to the pet. Cool, awesome. So yeah, like what we all know that your game design studio has like a XR and AI types of like a combination or focus on XR and game. Um, what's your entire process? For example, you mentioned that you have some, your entire team is very technical. How many
Mm.
people and what types of for example, you have like a 3D modeler and you have developer, how they work well together? Because as far as I know, some other teams, it's all very small, like three, four people and
Hmm.
then everybody do everything. So what's
Yeah.
your like a team, like what's the production flow?
We're about 10 people, and so we're very much in a similar, everybody's wearing multiple hats scenario. People are a little more specialized, but still some people will pull double duty in terms of the roles that they're on. Um, but where we're technical, I'd say, is that like we have two artists on the team, both 3D focused, but both also very technical and can go into Unity. They can set up their art. They can work with the programming team to actually address things directly. And we really like that. Like that's like I said, because we're so technical, when we were looking to have another artist join the team, we were looking for someone who had Unity experience that could go in and work with the programmers. Um, our lead designer is also a very talented programmer, and so he goes in and actually does what he wants from a design side and writes the code himself. So it's for us like every there's a strong engineering background, and I'm one of the least technical people on the team, but I at least like understand loosely from when I did programming. I would not be able to comfortably go in and do anything of any quality in Unity at this point, but I can at least understand somewhat like what they're dealing with. And admire that they have the ability to focus and write code. But I really now enjoy more of the like running the studio and the
Oh.
fact that really every day is a bit different in terms of what it throws at me. But I like the problem solving and building the environment that allows everyone like that to be creative and work together.
Mm.
So, yeah, I mean, a lot of our process, involves people all working really closely with one another and ideally having some familiarity with what other roles are doing. But it's evolving, like as we grow and add more people to the team. Our goal is to get everybody to be able to specialize a little bit more.
Mm. Yeah, I think just like you said that as far as I know that the game industry looking for like a hiring looking for like the talents are switching to more generalist instead
Mm,
of the specialist because before normally people working for game industry is usually the huge studio like a Blizzard like a EA, those types of like a really huge company. But now I think since XR is for some reason for the XR studio, it's pretty much not like the huge corporation. It's all small and everybody can do both like a technical and art. So I think and for you, for example, like if there are a lot of like if students who graduate from game like a college or a department got a game design degree, what do you suggest them to do? For example, like they are probably not a senior because even though you guys grow together forming a company, but for some student, they just graduate and they are seeking for jobs and it's very tough. And if you see GDC right now, a lot of people who are seeking for jobs, they can only gather in a park. Why? Because they couldn't purchase the ticket. So, what do you see that for the younger generation who want to get into the XR field?
yeah, I mean it's so tough right now with games, like, and I always feel it feels like it hasn't been that long, but it's been 10 years since we started. And sometimes I'll talk to students and they'll ask me for advice. And I'm like, gosh, it was 10 years ago that we started doing this and the world was a different place then. But I mean, I think one of the things that, at least for the advice for students, that I still think is true. I think there's like two things I usually come up a lot because I'll go into we still are really involved with a lot of colleges nearby. And whenever I talk to students, I think usually the two things that come up a lot are one is networking.
Mm,
I think it's just something that everybody's got to get comfortable with. And, going out to events and growing your network and becoming friends with other people that are working in your industry is really just something that you have to do now if you want to break in. And I think it's something that is tough for a lot of people because when you first start doing it, you're not good at it. But I think that's where I see a lot of students give up is that they go to one event and it's really uncomfortable and awkward and they stop doing it. And I'll have people tell me that I'm really good at networking. And it's still something that I'm like, really? Because I still remember I mean, it took me 100+ events before I really felt comfortable, and still every now and then I don't. And it's something that I think I say to students as there's a lot of people that I meet who are in their 40s and 50s that have been working in games, since they were in their 20s, and they're uncomfortable at these events. Like it's just like there's a lot of people with social anxiety, and so I say that because it's like, well, everybody's kind of going through that at events, and I recommend getting comfortable going out there and networking is really a skill that you have to build up over time. Like you're not going to be good at it the first time that you go to an event, but you're going to slowly get better at it over time. And the only way to do that is to stick with it and be persistent about doing it. It's like going to the gym, right? You don't go once and then come out ripped. You have to keep going. And the other thing that I also see for students going back to kind of the generalist point is that a lot of students go through school and they don't pick a particular area to focus
mm,
on. And so what ends up happening is they graduate and they have like a myriad of things on their portfolio. Like it's like they have some sketches, like artists, for
Oh,
example, right? Like they'll have sketches, they'll have like three 3D models, some environments they made, one animation. Um, and it's like their portfolio is just I'm an artist.
mm,
But when you're that fresh, like, and this doesn't apply to everyone, but for most people, when you're that new, what it is it's a lot of kind of mediocre stuff. And like most people know this, right? It's like it's sort of stuff that you were forced to do in school, and because you didn't really pick one thing to focus on,
mm,
you spread yourself too thin and never really got that great at any of it. And so I think it's a great thing to be a generalist. But I usually try to tell students to pick one thing to focus on
mm,
and build your portfolio around that. Like whatever you're most passionate and excited about, like build your 3D modeling portfolio. If you can also do audio, great. Like put it kind of hidden away in a side section. Like I also do this thing, but don't like muddy the portfolio with unclear, like, who are you and what do you do?
mm,
Because I see a lot of students right out of college that went to game design school, like they're not really sure what to put, so they sort of put everything they did while they were in school,
mm,
and then it's hard to tell like what they are. Because even for us, like when we're hiring someone who's a generalist, like we still need an artist, right? Like that we need an artist. We're not looking for a programmer. If there's an artist who knows a little bit of about programming, awesome. That's a huge plus. But
mm,
what we really need at the end of the day is someone to make art assets. And so we need someone who's really good at 3D or 2D or whatever it is that we're looking for. And
mm,
so uh that's the other thing that I see a lot from students, and I usually give them the advice of it. And if you really can't pick, you can always make two different portfolios and have one
mm,
be, your name 3D art, your name 2D art. Um, but I think having a clear message of like this is the thing I do,
mm.
especially when you're a student, is important.
Yeah. So what types of event are you like do you recommend? And also how to
Mm.
network? For example, as far as I know, a lot of students they just reach out to LinkedIn and say, "Can we have a coffee?" For me, it's like, wow, I don't know you, and you want to invite me for coffee. I don't know what professor or what teacher teaches that. It's like I know you want in-person chat,
Yeah.
but it's like I don't know you. Why should I going
Hmm.
a coffee with you? It's just very awkward, and I don't even know how to answer. So, what's the
Yeah.
best way? Like for example, in person, what's the best way to do it? Yeah.
Yeah. I really I mean, I like that approach, the like reach out to people and be like, hey, can I get, but I think where sometimes it's hard is like, you need to have a clear reason why you're like
Mm,
trying to reach out to this person. And that's where
mm,
sometimes students sort of know what they need to do, but they don't know how to frame it. And so, especially if you're new and you're like, I know I need to go meet with people, but like you don't know why, or you haven't, or you know why, but you just haven't conveyed it to the person.
mm,
And so, like, I think just be honest. I'll usually recommend to students with the portfolio thing is to find like there's somewhere that they want to work. They have like a dream place, right? So it's like if you're a 2D artist and you want to be a 2D artist at Blizzard, then go on LinkedIn and search 2D art intern Blizzard,
mm,
and just see who comes up and find people who have that position listed.
mm,
And you can find their portfolios because they're likely linked on their LinkedIn page. And then
mm,
you can put them up alongside yours and side by side compare, like, how do you compare against them, right?
mm,
Um, and be your own judge of where you need to be. And then you can always reach out to those people after and add them and be like, hey, you have the position that I really would love to have one day. And I'm still a student. I'd love to get coffee or do a call or, whatever. And I'd love your advice. I'd love to just learn more about like how did you get to where you are? What did you do that got you this position? What like I think framing it as like why are you reaching out to me and what do you want? Like sometimes I'll have students reach out as well that are just like, hi, how are you? Can we talk? And it's like, about what? What, so, I think you're absolutely right. Like sometimes it can be hard if like you get a random message out of the blue and they're not clear about it. But I'd
mm,
always just add, I think the angle of looking for advice is sort of the best when you're a student. And it was something that I did a lot when we were starting the studio, is I would reach out to other game studio CEOs that were local,
Mm,
people who ran indie studios. And I would go, hey, I'd like to get a coffee with you. We started Petrichor and I've been running it and I'm new to a lot of this. And I'd love your advice on a few things that I've been dealing with. And overwhelmingly, people responded really positively to that. And I made really good connections and friends still, and people who I still turn to for advice,
mm,
just doing that approach. So, similarly for students, like find people who you admire in the field, reach out to them and make it clear like you want their advice.
mm.
And it's a good way to build relationships with people.
Mm, yeah, so yeah, I think those are amazing advice. And for me, I also give my students some advice, which is that for me, I like people to come to me, or I can provide value to the
Mm.
person and potentially associate my name to the person that I admire. So I usually, as my student, since you are young and nothing to lose, right? 22 years old, 23, maybe find somebody. If you are UX UI person or a game person, look at people that you admire and say, hey, I'm like a I'm your big fan, and maybe watch that person's like a online presentation, and especially something that like for example, when I reach out to Charlie Fink, I remember that time I thought I will get rejected, but at the end I end up to have a phone call with Charlie. That was my first time. I remember during that time, long time ago, he wrote his first book called Charlie
Mhm.
Fink's Metaverse, and then I was I was doing a lot of like a more like a short clips podcasts, or some small I would say advertising, or like a XR news a little bit, not like this format, but more of not official. So I read the book and I really loved it. And I want to share a lot of knowledge from the book, but I was worried about if I reveal something that maybe people will watch my video and no longer buy the book from Charlie. That's what I'm not looking for. So because I didn't really know the law or like a copyright. Now I know it's a something like a fair right or
Yeah.
something. I can do it, but during that time, I just reach out to him, with the respectful like a message,
Yeah.
and said that, oh, thank you so much for writing this book, and I wanna create like 8 small episodes and feature this book, what types of content you like to feature, and I want to help you to boost your sales.
Mm.
And I happened to got a phone call with Charlie from when he was living in New York. So this is how I did it. I'm more like how can I like do some research about the people you want to reach, and then see what that person might need.
Mm.
Just think and what you can do to help them. For example, like boost their sales, right? Or something. I
Yeah.
don't know. That's like a my other approach.
Yeah.
Cool. So, you mentioned that you have like a game that you developed for like 3, 4 years and finally launch. Can you share with us like the process of launching a game, entering
Mm.
to the Meta Store? I know it's very, very hard, and I saw you guys like put the price. I admire because all my game out there so far, I published 2 games. I
Mm.
don't have the confidence to put the price on it because I was worried about, will people play it? Yeah. So what's the process of getting to the Meta Store? And did you guys get like any fundraising, any VC interest?
Yeah. So the game that I was talking about that we spent 3 or 4 years on was this game called Operation Dogfight that was a PC game. And that was really like the thing that spurred us to go, all right, we're not going to do that again. We're going to be focused about, we're going to self-fund up to a prototype, basically. Because what we were doing, and this is something like work for hire studios will fall into, what we were doing was we were building towards a full game, but we
Oh.
didn't have the funding to do that. So
Mm,
that's why it just got stretched over such a long period of time because it really wasn't that big of a game either. But we just didn't have the time because we had to keep pulling people onto client work. And so what we after that we were looking at what do we do, and so it was all right. We will self fund a prototype, and we're going to be really good about it. Like we're going to keep our lead designer slash engineer Oliver focused on just this. Like I'm not going to pull him on any client work. We're just going to take any of the revenue that we've earned over the years doing client work and use that to pay his salary while he works on the game
mm,
prototype. But then the other thing that we were clear about was we're not going to move forward with this prototype and build it out into a full game
mm,
until we get some external validation that this is a good idea, that there's interest, there's going to be funding support for it.
mm,
Like that was our real target was can we get someone to help us pay for this game? Because if we can't, like we can't do it on our own.
mm,
And so part of our previous games was we always had like games that we would still pitch for funding, but the ideas weren't great or the prototypes weren't there. And I think what was always holding us back was we sort of went forward with the idea but didn't do as much biz dev behind the scenes. What's the market for this and what's unique about this game and what are the
mm.
hooks and what's the unique selling points? And so we never could get any external funding because while we were building interesting, nice looking games, they just were missing that unique angle that someone who would fund it would be looking for.
Is that
And,
called product market fit?
yeah,
Oh.
exactly. And so for Mythic Realms, which is our current game that's actually launching timing wise, I think it's launching next week, but by the time this comes out, it might already be out. But March 13th is 2025. That's when we're launching.
Mm,
And so we've been working on that actually since like late 2023 was when we first started doing prototyping.
mm,
And like fortunately for us, like with that game, we were able to get external validation in terms of support from Meta. And so that was for us like a great sign that hey, we were onto something with this. Like we for that game really leaned into using mixed reality in a really compelling way
mm,
and also having a really good prototype that shows that we can execute on that because I think that was something where before our prototypes would drift a bit and we would focus on things that weren't as important to validate. And so, what I always recommend now is for prototypes, focus on the hard stuff that don't have answers already. So for Mythic Realms, the hardest bit was, well, how do we populate an RPG in your room? What the game is basically like where it's a mixed reality role playing game that takes place in your living room, and you're battling monsters and gathering resources on these expeditions in your room, and then you bring those materials back to VR and you build up this kingdom in VR over time, and that's how you unlock more expeditions to go on, which theme your room in different ways, and we have a bunch of bosses, and it's like a really big mixed reality game. And when we were building the prototype for that to pitch it,
mm,
we focused on the mixed reality dungeon aspect because that was something where there weren't really great examples of what that would be. So we knew we needed to prove that that was fun. We needed to be able to show the people we were pitching like here's how this works. The VR Kingdom portion, we faked all of that very quickly, like because VR games were already like you already had a sense of what VR was and what we were talking about when we talked about that part. I think mixed reality was where it was like that was where the core of what was unique about the game at the time was, and so we really needed to show that off in the prototype. Same thing, like we didn't spend time building menus and stuff that just like they know we're going to be have in the game, right? We focused on just like what are the things that are subject to wild spread of imagination when you just use words or pictures to describe it, like
mm.
build what it actually feels like to play. So we focused on that for Mythic Realms, and I think for us that was how we were able to be successful in terms of getting support to take it further and now be launching.
So
Um, yeah,
I want to recap and rephrase it. So you mean that focus on the core uniqueness
yeah,
instead of something that everybody can do.
exactly. Yeah.
Wow. So you mentioned that you got some support from like a Meta store, right? How do you approach it? For example, I've already joined like a Meta starter program, got the Discord. How can you reach out to them or send them a pitch deck? How do you reach out to internal people?
Yeah, I mean this is where I think the networking part definitely plays in is that a lot of it is like, who do you know? Who will make a nice introduction for you that will get you in the door with the right person? And
Mm,
that's really hard. Like that's something that takes just like time and going to all the XR events and meeting people. But that was what we did was someone opened the door for us to the right person who we were able to then talk to. But we went through Oculus Start as well, which was a great program. Like they also like opened the door for us, and it's amazing that Meta has programs like this. Like a lot of other tech companies
mm.
with platforms similar make it really hard to develop for. Um,
It's like a walls everywhere
yes.
and prevent you to do things. For example, like for Apple Vision Pro, I was trying to ask ChatGPT how to code it, and it comes back and said, "Sorry, this website is encrypted. I
Mm,
couldn't get any code from it, so I need to read all the documentation." Oh,
yeah.
this is so hard. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. 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 And I think like I appreciate the fact that Meta has Oculus Start because it's a really nice way to like you're new to the ecosystem, you can apply for it, and if you get accepted, you just sort of get an in where you can then learn and build and like get the tools and relationships you need to like take it further. So it's awesome that they have that track. So I really like if you're interested in XR, definitely apply. They're like the people who run it are awesome. They've been super supportive of us. Like even now that we've sort of like graduated from it and we're working on a store title, they're still super supportive of us. So yeah, it's so definitely do opportunities like that. I think it's really like take up as many opportunities as you can, go to as many things as you can. We went to GDC and we set up in-person meetings and we demoed the game to as many people as we could. We went to AWE and we demoed the game to as many people as we could. And we flew to Germany for Gamescom where we also pitched it.
Oh.
So we really, and this was something like I say all this with the fact that we had been in business for years, and we had profit and revenues from several years of doing well with client work that we were able to self-fund these activities. It's really hard if you're just like starting to do all that. And unfortunately, the answer is it takes time, and you have to be if you want to take the approach of bootstrapping, there is a monotonous, slow growth that you need to focus on to get there. And so that was something that we did that I think was a huge part of how we were able to was just we tried to be everywhere to get into everything we could and show it. Went to MetaConnect. And so that was big for when we were pitching the game was that we got people as often as we could to sit down and play the game. And I think that yeah is really what you have to do early on to like get in.
Wow. So yeah, so it seems like a lot of work, networking, and networking is not like a just, you go there and having conversation. I think having conversation is the first thing.
Yeah,
As far as I know, I heard a lot of people like they have negative thoughts about networking. Is that I think they have too much of goal driven. Like for example, oh, I went to that event and I didn't get any client or I
yeah,
didn't get any jobs, so it's not working for me, or like, oh, it's useless, it's wasting all my time. But I think networking is more like you meet people, say hi, and maybe after a while, and people think of you, or you think of people, or like you see something and you share with that people, with that person. Not really like, oh, I go to that networking event and I have to get how many like leads, like
yeah.
how many people. Yeah.
That is a great point because yeah, I think it's the same as like and also like people will suss out the person who is there who's like I'm going to generate 10 leads at this event because it's like you know who's trying to do that.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I always tell people who are nervous about it. Like you're going somewhere where like the event is people who are all interested in the same thing you are and just want to hang out with each other and talk about the thing that's a shared interest between you all. And you're just going there to make friends with these people. Like
Yeah.
and a project or an opportunity or something might come out of that at some point,
Mm.
but you need to, like you mentioned, like not be as aggressive about like I'm explicitly going here because I'm going to make one deal at the event. It's just sort of it's you go and I think try to create genuine relationships with people about stuff that is a shared interest between you all. If you're at an XR event, you're probably all interested in XR.
Yeah, yeah, and building relationship is like a long term, maybe not
Yeah,
this few years, but maybe future. So just keep nicely to people. I think yeah, that would be great because you never know who you will need in the
yeah,
future. So I think it just be nice to people and keep in touch and see if there's anything you can offer. You offer to them and
yeah,
yeah, just be general and maybe there will be something comes up. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. So I heard that you are more business and the pitching side inside your studio. Can you teach like us how to make a great pitch for XR game? Like
Mm,
for a developer, because we all know that developers sometimes was so into like a few days ago, I talked to my friend. My friend, she's a sales person. She's so good at sales, and she told me that actually she doesn't really know what's the actual technical things for the product, but she can create a general nice intro and also ask a lot of questions and later on bring the engineer in to the
mhm.
conversation. So and when I talked to her about my game, I start diving into too technical stuff, and she said, "No, no, nobody want to hear that. Go back to something so general and just
Yeah,
having fun and ask questions." And I told her that sometimes if you know too much of technical things, you just cannot help and you just die to
yeah.
the another place. So how do you generate like a pitch to, for example, investors or general like a people audience? What's your strategy?
Yeah. So that's a great point is yeah, you don't want to get too much into the weeds with like specifics. Um, I think so games are interesting because it's like it's a handshake between so many different people and roles. Like I can make a really nice pitch deck, but I need really good looking art and I need a really great design vision for what this is, and I need a really great prototype. And it's a lot of like groups working together. And I think that is the number one thing with pitching is it wasn't just me. Like, and that says like I can go and I can workshop and figure out how do we sell this to people in an interesting way, but I'm also backed by a team of really talented people who we were all sort of in that shared central vision of what this thing is. And so I think that's like the number one thing to get a good pitch. And this is it depends on like if you're a solo dev, obviously, like it's more yourself than it is if you have a team. But for us, it was I spent a lot of time on us meeting and talking about what we wanted this to be and what was the vision of this game and how were we going to get there and like making sure that we were all aligned on that and we knew why we were doing what we were doing and what we wanted to get out of it. And so I think like if you're a leader in a company and you're the one who's running the pitch process, it's as much how do I pitch this and as like versus the how do I pitch this internally and make sure that we're all on the same page. And so that's a part of it. And then the other part of it is in terms of explaining the game, like you mentioned, you don't want to get into like specific stuff. You want to keep it fairly high level. And I found for me when we were pitching Mythic Realms, the absolute best thing that we did was that and this goes back to networking, I knew all these people already from years of networking, but I reached out to pretty much every single person that I know, not even XR, just anyone who I knew who was successful and had run a company, had successfully pitched projects before, even people who hadn't, like they hadn't ever raised funding for a game, but they'd at least run a studio before. And I probably went through two or three rounds and 25 to 30 people giving feedback on our pitch deck. Um,
Wow, I think this is a brilliant idea. I mean,
yeah,
I had a pitch deck, but it's just like I asked some of my friend, close friend, but you know, for friends, we all have the mindset
yeah,
pretty much the same. So I think it's just like send out to people you know and see if
yeah,
there's any feedback. I think that's brilliant because
yeah.
you can see different you can see your blind spot. Yeah.
Yeah. And some like, and it was such a wide spread of people that I had some people who were really nice about it and like again, were more friendly and were like, "Oh, this looks good. Nice job, everyone." And then I had people who just were absolutely brutal and tore into it. And like I'm the type of person now where like that doesn't really get to me and I know they're doing it. Like I know them well enough and we're friends and I know they're doing it because they care so much about wanting to see us succeed that it hurts them to see like us have something bad. So you have to be willing to like take what they say and know if someone's like tearing into you, as long as if someone's doing it to be mean, it's apparent and you want to avoid those people. But for everyone who I showed it to, the people who tore it in the most were like, I'm doing this because I love you guys and I want to see you succeed.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, and so it's like what I did was I tried to break it into phases too, where we do like maybe 7 to 10 people with one version of it.
Mm,
I would take bulleted notes while they talked about
mm,
what they liked or didn't like or what they sent me in an email.
mm,
And I would then go back and review and kind of do like a tick for like shared things that came up. So like if 7 out of 10 people all mention that they a particular slide it wasn't clear how the game played or something, I was like, okay, we need to do this.
mm,
Versus if like one person had one off comment that was like negative but
mm,
no one else mentioned it, I'd be like, this isn't really a problem we need to address because like it was really a one person specific problem versus like a collective thing people raised. So we went through that and I did that with the whole team. Like sometimes they'd sit in on those reviews, but mostly it was like me doing it and then I'd bring that info back and be like, "Okay, here's all the data I collected." I had like a note stock that everyone on the team could see from every call I did and we would
mm,
run through that and we would update the pitch deck based on what we were seeing as like shared feedback.
mm.
So I recommend doing something like that, like getting as much external feedback as you can from people who've done it before.
Wow, wow. Now I have a more like a clear idea because maybe I will share with you my deck because
Sure.
I mean
Yeah.
I have ideas, but somehow I find I'm drawn to because my idea is more like a turn in literature, classic literature into immersive experience. It sounds pretty cool because it's like I read a article is a professor said that now a lot of even Ivy League, a lot of university students, they couldn't read one book. They couldn't even finish reading one book for their entire time there. So
Hmm.
it kind of concerns me that, wow, like a literacy, right? Because right now everything is on your fingertips and also short clips. So I was thinking about instead of playing game, maybe insert some educational content. And I'm now turning Moby Dick into a mixed reality game.
Yeah,
But
cool.
somehow I always tell myself that let's just launch the game quickly. But somehow I just caught into like, oh, the house style is not consistent. Look doesn't look like a 19th century in that that harbor.
Hmm.
Sometimes I also need to tell myself let's not call into the details. Let's look at the big picture. So yeah, I also wanna ask you what's your feedback because I'm doing the inventory system and just like you said
Mhm.
that you guys didn't do the inventory system
Yeah.
when pitching to the investor. So I wanna learn the strategy because I am like a yeah. So I think there are a lot of things to learn.
Yeah. It depends. Like, it really depends. Like you mentioned, we did a similar, like, just get stuff out as quick as possible. Like, it depends on your goals. We had a whole bunch of like micro augmented reality games that we shipped before we pitched something the size of Mythic Realms. And we probably did like between 10 to 12 like small little AR experiences that we built.
Mm,
across a bunch of different platforms. And those were ones that like we got out as quickly as we could. Like we scoped them for like a week or two of work and we just got out little demos. And those fit really nicely in between client projects or when someone had like a week or two of free time or things were slow on a particular project. And it was a nice way to do like R&D on XR and learn more about how it worked. But also we could then release them. And one of them ended up in the AWE keynote that year.
Oh,
They Ori pulled it up as
oh.
on the screen, and I took a picture of it and was like, "Oh my God!" One of the things we made was literally part, and it was like a simple little thing we built, but it
Mm,
was like you don't get opportunities like that unless it's out in the world. So like I
yeah.
think it's perfectly fine to like build stuff and be like, I'm just putting it out, just putting it out. But just like knowing with what you're building, what you want it to be. So for us, we had a whole bunch of little put it out in the world, just sort of put out things to learn and also to like build up people seeing like Petrichor build stuff like this.
Hmm.
And each got a little more complicated. And then eventually that led to like, okay, now we're ready to make something like Mythic Realms. And we're gonna like sit on this and we're gonna build a demo versus just like put it out quick.
Wow. So it's like constantly learning and also see what works, what's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think that your experience running like a game design studio, game studio for around 10 years, I think those like experience to kind of prioritize things and also in between clients, what can the team do? I think that's very important to keep up to date. And
Yeah.
also, recently I saw a lot of AI tools, especially for coding and also 3D model preparation. I think yesterday or 2 days ago, I saw a Meta release one of like they're like a Gen AI
Mm,
types of models, and also I personally use Trellis to
mm,
quickly from image to 3D model. And recently there was another 3D kind of model called Huyan 3D. So there are a lot of different tools. How do your team or you utilize those tools to
mm,
speed up or make the production efficiency? Because, for example, like I had difficulties using Trellis to my game because I don't know, maybe for some reason the image that I put in and the generated the outcome was not looking. It's not that good as advertised. So I want to ask you: is that because you know Elon Musk just mentioned that XAI is going to create a AI game studio. So, what do you see currently the AI? We all know somehow something will be automated, but now what's the current status, or what's your team currently use like AI to facilitate the game development process?
mm. So yeah, AI in games is like a sticky subject for sure right now. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who are really worried about it. There's a lot of people who are really bullish about it, and I think like we're somewhere in the middle. Like we're cautiously optimistic about what some of the tools can do, and we use some of it for like I think a great example is that pitch decks. Like we will have client work opportunity come our way where it's like they'll put out a proposal and they want you to bid on it. And those decks usually you want to be pretty nice to look at. Like you want to have good visuals. You want it to convey like what are you going to build for them. And we would lose projects before to much bigger studios than ours because they'd have like a dedicated artist that was just doing sales like pitch deck graphics for them. But the it's evened out a little bit because of some of the AI tools where our art director, because we can't afford to have someone who could do that, we're so small, but she can use something like Midjourney to create backgrounds or like the loose sort of frame, you could get it 80%, 75% of the way there, and then she goes in and just sort of cleans it up and adds a little bit of her own stuff to it. But it helps like even the bar a little bit for how we're going up against people So we had a pitch to a really large company that we ended up winning, and we used a lot of AI generated graphics. And we were clear, like we used AI for this. We then edited some of them ourselves, but like we purely are using these just to convey the vision of what we want to build for you.
Mm,
Because that would have cost if like we were footing the bill ourselves. Like that's something you spend thousands of dollars on for just the chance of getting a project.
mm,
And so that's something that like for us we find it really helpful. Uh,
mm.
I think like there's other parts where, it's something that it's we still would prefer to just have someone do it, right? Like we wouldn't try to do all the art in our game using AI tools. Like we
Yeah.
we have artists on the team that create all that because
Mm,
we like it's just not there, and also like we can have a little bit more of our own touch on what we make.
mm.
But they'll use tools to help like through the process. Same thing with programming. They'll make use of certain tools that will help speed up things for them, but overall, we'll still write the code ourselves. Um, and so I think it's a little bit of a balance right now of the stuff's good and it keeps getting better, but also it's really tough because you look at it and you go, okay, well, this is definitely removing jobs that that existed, right? And so we try to be careful about how do we use these, but in a way that is fair and we don't feel like kind of icky using it, but it's tough because it's something that like I'll have conversations with people. I'm probably one of the more um excited people on the team about these kinds of tools. And so then the people who are more against using stuff like this, I'll say like, well, do you think that these are going to go away? Like they're just like no one else is going to use them, or they'll just disappear? And the answer is usually like no, they're here and people are using them. And so,
Mm.
then I'll be like, okay, like if our competition for projects is like using some of these tools and they're getting stuff done 3 times faster than we are because they're using
Yeah.
some of these things,
Yeah.
and we keep losing projects because of it, and like is
Oh,
that
speed.
what that wouldn't be good, right? So
Yeah.
it's really tough. And so I'm optimistic that overall what it's going to do is it's going to remove a lot of the monotony and stuff that people just didn't really like doing at all anyway.
Mm,
So that it'll free you up to be more creative and more focused on doing what you want to do and building the things you want to build. So I try to be optimistic about it, but I am definitely worried about like what does this do to all these jobs that used to exist, right? I don't think there's a great answer for that yet. Whenever anyone just says, "Well, universal basic income" or something like that, it's
oh,
like,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, there's like good and bad to it, but I think the same can be said about a lot of technology advances over the years. So cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, so for example, like 11 Labs, right? If you don't have money, even though right now the voiceover actor was becoming cheaper and cheaper, but if you want free, you can use 11 Labs and
Yeah,
get somehow good quality of like a character voiceover, all those good stuff. And also, I find out that animation, some of the animation was pretty good, like a maximum, but it has been
yeah,
used for long time ago. And I find out that a lot of texture, like a stable diffusion, all those like AI tools, like a Blender plugin, yeah, it's getting better and better. And for me, I find out that the tool, the AI tools, for me, the best usage is coding because I find out that coding for some reason it just become better and better, more efficient. And as for 3D model, I tried to use it, but I ended up to generate one really sloppy model, and I
yeah,
put walls next to it. And actually, we have three kind of like a team member. They were all my previous students and game department students. So they were kind of working together, and I find out it's very interesting to see, just like you say, I know, like in my school, there were a couple of professors who were against AI. So I remember every time when I say something about AI, later on I will receive, when I came home, I will receive an email talking about he is like against it and well CC2 teams and forced me to reply. I usually say thank you for your valuable opinion. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. I didn't say yes or no, but I knew that some of my students, when taking my class, they were all optimistic about AI and use a lot.
Yeah.
But whenever they go to that professor's class, then start talking about, no, I don't use AI. AI is unethical. Da da da. So yeah, I also think about like it's like you said that if you don't use AI, your competitor will work faster than you. So yeah, so this is like a kind of like the questions that how can we balance it? For me, it's like, hey, it's free there. Everybody's using it. Let's just
Yeah.
use it. But for people who concern about ethical issue, because pretty much it's all our data to feed on AI. So I think in the future probably there's no copyright because everybody's work was probably generated or inspired by AI. So I don't know. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of interesting ethical issues we need to kind of like think more about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have any final advice for the indie XR or game developer? Like because we all know that if you see like a LinkedIn, a lot of game developers, like animators, 3D modelers. Yeah, especially you see the tech is massively laying off people, and also federal government is also laying off people, which was considered to be the most stable job in the past. So, how do you like what's your advice for indie developers to keep working on the things that they love while making money?
Mm. Oh boy. It's hard. Like that's and it's hard now, especially like I said, like when we started, it was a different world. And so like I think about, okay, if I was starting fresh right now with things how they are, would we have still been able to do what we did? And I think not. Like I think it would have been really hard. So uh yeah, it's I mean I would say one of the things that we did early on that helped get us where we ended up was to not be picky about the work that you get. Like, I was anywhere and everywhere I could be, and we were like it's got pluses and minuses to it, but it gave us money, which we needed to operate. But we did like application development in Unity. We did prototypes for people who just like had their own startup but had enough money to afford it. We did a lot of museum installation work for years. That was actually what really helped us take off as a company was we started doing subcontracting work to these exhibit design firms. And it was all stuff that like when we started the company, I wasn't really my heart wasn't set on like we're going to become a museum exhibit design studio, but it paid the bills and it let us work on games on the side and build up our reputation. And so I'll talk to some people sometimes who are kind of picky about what they work on. And I think if you're going to bootstrap the studio, you can do that and make it work. But if you're not picky, it certainly helps at least sustain the studio long enough so that you can get more at bats, so that you can launch more games, so that you can have more chances. So that's something I usually recommend to people is like don't scoff at stuff outside of games or things you didn't really think about. If it's an opportunity and the price is right and you're confident you can do it and it's not, soul draining, then I would recommend, doing it if that's what you need to get to where you want to go. Um, yeah, I mean that definitely was helpful for us. And then I guess the other thing I'd say is just general something that I think helped us when we were building was looking at whatever you're interested in building on, be it XR or AI or whatever new platform. And when you're thinking about your concept, try to really frame it as like, how does this use that technology or how is this unique to the platform in a really interesting way. Like, I think when we were looking at augmented reality games, we were really excited about stuff that would appear in your room and how like the tech could utilize the space around you. And I think like this is going to become even more of a thing as like camera access becomes more available on these devices and you can actually start to do understanding of like what's in the space. Um, but for us with pitching Mythic Realms, we really leaned into like how it would use mixed reality in all these interesting ways that like enemies would climb over your furniture and you could like climb over your furniture with the headset on and knock stuff against walls. And so I think for us it was really like a lot of what we were seeing at the time was like slam based, put something down on a table and you could play like a flat screen game, but now it was on a table. And like those were just sort of early, like, what do we do with this? Level we can just do this. And so like some of the stuff was neat, but it wasn't like a full use of what the tech could be. So that was when we were pitching Mythic Realms, we really leaned into like how can we use this technology in a really interesting way that makes sense for why you're using it. Because a lot of the time we would get questions where it's like, why is this in mixed reality? Why is
Yeah.
this not just a VR game?
Mm.
And so I feel like we have a good answer for that and how we use your room. But I also encourage with, for whatever it is that you're working on, whatever technology, whatever platform, to spend some time thinking about, how are you using it to its fullest?
Mm. Yeah, I think what you say is like how can technology serve the player or the user? Focus on that, the unique contribution instead of trying to do something that is kind of like for example, like some people just like, oh, I want to try different technology, try different cool stuff, but there's no usage or no need to do
Yeah,
it. So yeah, and you also mentioned a great point. For example, like at the beginning, you pretty much take a lot of things that maybe it's the last fun, but you can generate income. I think this is also very important for a lot of people for us to learn that we just take whatever we can take and then just be alive and keep moving forward.
yeah.
Yeah, and do you have any last kind of like things that you want to share that we didn't mention during our podcast?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll end on if you made it this far through and found, what I said interesting, definitely feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to connect with new people on LinkedIn and chat with new folks. And I'll also say our game Mythic Realms should be out by this point. And so please, if you're interested and you want to see that game, we're available on MetaQuest for the 2 Pro, 3, and 3S. And yeah, go check out Mythic Realms, or if you shoot me an email, I can send you a key. But yeah, no, so thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Cool. Thank you. That's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. We release episodes weekly. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out our other episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Support us by giving us a follow and a 5-star rating, or subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Thank you and see you next time.